Hi everyone, good morning. We apologize for the delay. I may have misled people yesterday saying that this would start at 9:30, so maybe that's why they're not here. Or maybe they enjoyed too much of London's nightlife. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Francois Pachet. I first met Francois in the early 2000s. I don't know if you remembered. I was a student in Paris at the time. And he was at Sony CSL, and he was already working on artificial intelligence and music. And I got accustomed with a continuator, which was a fascinating piece of technology that would respond to anything you played in the same style. And I think a lot of that research went into the next decade that informs what he's going to talk about today. Francois now works for Spotify, where he's a director at a newly created lab focusing on new ways of creating music with machine learning. I'm very much looking forward to Francois' talk. Please give him a big hand.
Hello. Good morning. Thanks a lot for inviting me here. I'm very impressed by this community, which is so big now, 400 plus people. It's as big as Izmir. It's incredible, and it's an honor for me to be here, and I hope I will not be boring, and maybe I'm not sure if I will be useful, because I will not talk really about technical audio stuff, which is not really the things I'm doing now. But I will talk about, well, this is the title, right? Making music with AI, but that's a boring title if you look. So I have a better title, which is this one. And I will try to, the message I'm trying to give is, in fact, this whole business of using AI and machine learning for making music. I will try to give some examples, talk about the challenges, of course, and all that. But in the end, the question that it raises is, how is that I think we have to challenge the notion of new, what we call new. And I will start by that by giving an example of what we call new today in the domain of music. And so the message at the end will be, well, today's situation is different. There are new categories of new. That's the end of my talk, right? But I give it now so that you can leave if you want. So before AI, that is, a few days ago or something, it's not very old, there was this idea that in music there were either new things or plagiarism. That is something that is new but actually a copy or an illegal or legal copy of something existing, right? There were basically two concepts, something new and something that's a copy. And in fact, in the middle, you had what they call a cover. A cover, like in French, reprise is when you take an existing song or an existing piece of music and you do another version. And you can see this as a kind of plagiarism, but it's legal usually because the copyright owners usually get credit or money or royalties, right? So I give examples on this. For instance, example I like very much is a British thing. Actually, it's there's this song called "He's So Fine" by the Chiffons. Oh, it works. 1957 was quite a big hit, and so that's an original. When it went out, it was new. Right. It was different from the rest. It was not plagiaristic. Then there were a lot of covers of this song, like this one. So that's a cover of an original, of what was an original in 57. It was in 74. Then, well, it's not chronological, but then you had George Harrison, after the Beatles, made this song called My Sweet Lord. That was new. There was a problem. As you know, there was a big trial for plagiarism that Harrison lost. Because this song, My Sweet Lord, is very, very much, it's very similar to the songs by the Chiffons. Melodies, harmony, and all that. But because the song was still very successful, there was lots of covers My Sweet Lord, like this one with Billy Preston and many others. Right, so that's a cover of a plagiaristic song. But so we have an algebra of two concepts. So not much we can do with this, except this guy, British guy Jonathan King. We made this. This is a cover of Is So Fine, but in the style of My Sweet Lord. That's a typical British thing, trying to find special cases, right? So that's the intro of My Sweet Lord. And then, right, okay. So, but that was the ontology we had before. Again, original covers and plagiarism. 2, 3, it depends. There is actually another category which exists in the music industry that's not very well formalized. It's called a parasitage in France, parasite stuff. And when you really copy the style in such a way that you cannot be accused of plagiarism, but that's a very specific case, right? So that was the landscape of the new before. Right? So now let's go back to machine learning, and I will come back on that after. So machine learning, you hear about it every day. And to a point that it becomes actually a bit embarrassing and boring, but it's true that these techniques work very well for almost, it seems, every domain where it outperforms humans. But if you look carefully, it works only in what we call well-defined problems. So what is a well-defined problem? It's a problem for which you have computable or mathematical, if you want, a computable function that tells you whether a solution is good or not. So if you play chess or Go, obviously you win or you lose. That's a well-defined problem. If you want to do a self-driving car, it's well-defined because you have rules that you have to satisfy. A number of people you kill per second has to be as low as possible, but it's well-defined. I mean, you know what you're trying to do, right? Face identification is very well defined. You have a ground truth, which is not debatable. It's him or her or not, right? And in health, all these problems are well defined. They're very, very, very well defined. And yes, machine learning works very well because it's going to find patterns in the data that humans maybe don't see. So that's great. And the way it works, again, I think you had yesterday some talks about that, so I will not spend time. Is basically you train a system with examples, and then the system learns how to, that's supervised learning, by the way, but that doesn't matter here really, but learns how to predict, classify, cluster, identify, and so forth. And you can apply this to music. You can make predictions. I mean, automatic classification is a rather well-defined problem, for instance. You know usually what you want to get, more or less. And you have many models to do that. I will not come back on that. You had Markov models in the 50s, and now you have deep networks. But basically, they are almost the same kind of stuff where you train models, and then once they are trained, they generalize the data, and then you can use them for new cases. So there are well-defined problems for which AI is really useful in music. And I give just one example of stuff that has been going on at Spotify, but it's many people do this. It's a voice separation, or so that's a very interesting problem because it used to be a very hard problem on which regiments of mathematicians and signal processing specialists would work. Consider this as a very hard problem, and this problem has been solved completely. It has been erased from the landscape almost. Just because there is so much data out there. So you can train a system that's going to learn how to remove or to separate the voice, for instance, from a mix. So you can imagine there are lots of applications that you can imagine, like karaoke and all that. But what's interesting that, to come back at the new thing, is that if it's well defined, then you can do it. You can solve it very well. The way you solve it, there are lots of papers on that, is basically you learn how to generate a mask that will actually remove the vocal and by definition also extract them. And it works to an extent that's really remarkable. again, talk to, if you have friends working in signal processing, in voice separation or source separation, they are really depressed. Their subject of study has disappeared. All right, but there are problems which are not well defined, and I suggest that we call this art. Because in art, for instance, you don't have any definition of what's a nice melody, what's an interesting book, a catchy story, a good movie, a nice picture, a good recipe. You don't have any objective mathematical function that tells you that. I mean, people try sometimes, but I've never seen anything like that. So the question is, so what is very strange that in spite, although there is no cost function for art and for music in particular, a lot of people have used AI to make music. So what does it mean, and why do we do that? So first of all, I mean, you may know that AI has been, I mean, not AI, but the modern deep learning-based machine learning has been used recently in the last 5-6 years to do a lot of stuff related to art. There was a whole movie trailer generated by deep learning 3 years ago. A movie script that's very interesting, generated by Arnens and by Ross Goodwin, who is not a researcher, who is a journalist, who is a writer. So it means that these guys can actually use these things to generate interesting stuff. And this script was actually shot with real human actors, and you can see it on the web if you want. It's interesting. It's not the best movie ever, but it's interesting because it creates something that is locally consistent. And anyway, there were lots of criticism of that. You can have a look if you're interested. The Rembrandt, as you have maybe heard, this is more like a pastiche, and I will come back on that. It's a Rembrandt that does not exist, but in the style of Rembrandt. And there are lots of techniques used for videos, even cooking now. In New York, there are restaurants which propose recipes made by AI. And so I give some element here. I mean, this is a pastiche, right? This is an AI-generated picture in the style of Rembrandt that does not exist. It's not plagiaristic. Not that I know, actually, but it's a pastiche because it really looks like a prototype Rembrandt painting, right? There were other images generated by AI, like what they call the hallucinations by Google Brain, which are not pastiche, which are strange mixes of stuff where there is lots of interesting local microstructure, but globally it doesn't go really anywhere, except in this case because it was done from an existing painting. But that's another kind of new, right? And so the paradox, again, to come back is that people should say, but why don't you try to do with music what everyone does with everything else, like with health, with cancer, with self-driving cars and Go and chess? That is, try to train a system to be able to generate a song that's popular, right? Because that's the closest definition we have of a good song is a song that's popular, which of course is not true, but that's the only thing we have. And so I would like to spend a few minutes on that, because I think that's really a crucial point. Because, I mean, popularity, we have a lot of data on popularity, right, for music. If you take any platform, a streaming platform like Deezer or Apple Music or Amazon, you have about 50 million titles, hundreds of millions of listeners. So you have a lot of data on what people prefer, right, what they like. And so you could say, all right, so let's take this data and try to learn what's a good song and so forth. And there comes this paper by Watts and his students from 2006, which is already quite old, in Science, published in Science. And this paper, I'm not going to go through this paper, but it's very important because it tells you that popularity data is chaotic. So basically what they have done a very interesting experiment. I really recommend this paper even if you are interested in only in audio, but because it challenges the way we think about what's nice, what's popular, what works, and all that in terms of music and in terms actually of all cultural objects. So what they've done basically is that they made an experiment where they showed music to people And they made two groups. In one group, the music was shown randomly on a web page, and in another group, the same music was shown, but not randomly, it was ranked according to what people prefer in that group. So which is an implementation of what is called social pressure. So in one group, there was no social pressure. You are alone in the world, and you decide what you like. And in other group, you have social pressure. Well, like we have now. Now we have a lot of social pressure, as you know, because of the social networks. And so they compared what happens with the same pieces of music with and without social pressure. It's more complicated than that, but in fact, they had different levels of pressure. It doesn't matter. The result is, first of all, with social pressure, you have increased inequality. What does it mean? It means that without pressure, you have hits. You have music that some people, in average, prefer to other, right? But there are small hits. So with social pressure, you have huge, super mega hits. Ed Sheeran, 4 billion streams in 4 years. Crazy, more than the Beatles, and Pink Floyd, and the Bee Gees, you know. So social pressures make ultra big hits. Second, and this is most interesting, increase unpredictability. What it means, they did the experiment 8 times for each group. 8 times, no social pressure, the hits are more or less the same. They are small, but they are the same. That is, a given piece of music is preferred because of its intrinsic quality or intrinsic value, whatever you call it. It's good, let's say, okay? If you have social pressure, you do 8 times, you have different hits. You know, that's incredible. So it all depends on initial conditions. That's something that everyone should know working in the music industry. I mean, what it means, and there's another thing that you have increased convexity. It means that if a song is slightly better than another one, with social pressure, it will make a huge difference in popularity, where it will not without social pressure. Okay, and so forth, right? So this is just a conclusion to say, no, it's not reasonable to use popularity data to train a machine learning system, because you are going to train it on something that is completely chaotic and dependent on initial condition, which can be something like the temperature or whatever, like what they call the early arrivers. The first ones would click, will decide, that kind of stuff. I'm exaggerating because the paper is more subtle than that. It does not say that there is no such thing as intrinsic quality. It just says that this is completely buried below the weight of social pressure, right? Okay, so that should be enough to say, no, we are not going to do that. People who do that, they do what is called hit song science, right? They try to predict the popularity of titles based on that kind of data. And I've written a couple of papers to try to show that it was complete junk. It doesn't matter. They do it anyway and actually make money, but that's another story. All right, this is to say, okay, so you cannot train a system to make good music because you don't know what is good music, so what the hell are you doing, So what I've been doing, first I try to have fun. It's true that when you are researchers, you don't always know very well what you are doing. That's part of the game. But I made, let's say, 4 experiments in the last 6, 7, 8 years dealing with developing AI for making music, but not only that, I was really obsessed by the idea of not stopping at the demo level, but going until the end. That is, making real music with real musicians for a real audience, and then seeing what happens in the real ecosystem that we have, which is, again, heavily influenced by very heavy social pressure, right? So that's not really an experiment, that's trying to do it for real. And so I will go very quickly through these things and show you a little bit what's going on. So the first thing that we did in 2016, I think, was a song in the style of Beatles. So who does not know this song? We are in the UK, but sometimes people don't know the Beatles. So, because the Beatles are such a monument, so what we did, we took 45 songs. Here we took the score of the song, not the audio, right? And we fed it to this system called Flow Composer we did at that time, because it's part of the Flow Machine project, which was held at Sony and UPMC. And this training set, let's say, generated a couple of songs, and Benoît Carré, who is a musician, whose name now is Skigge now, but he's a real musician. We made this song, and I participated a little bit, but called Daddy's Car. I'll just you can hear it on the web. All right. So what you hear is audio here, but what we generated was not the audio in that case, was the score, that is the melody and the harmony and all that. And now, what did the AI do here? Well, I will just show you an extract of the song, play an extract in the middle, somewhere in the bridge, and I will play it transposed by a fifth down, and at the same time, I play the beginning of Michel. So you should hear both, in principle, on like left and right, if it works. I play it again. So you hear the guitar intro of Michel here with the F minor going down, F, E, E flat, and so forth. And the part in the bridge, and it is exactly the same harmony. So what I'm trying to show here is that, I don't know why I don't need this, is that what the AI did is, first of all, it identified a pattern that's very frequent in Beatles song, which is this harmonic descent. If you're a musician, if you're a guitarist, you know this kind of stuff. You know, there are lots of songs by the Beatles with that kind of pattern, and not only the Beatles, but others did it a lot. It became a kind of characteristics of the pops of the 60s in some sense. So the AI, what it does, it first of all recognize or identify that kind of patterns, and then re-instantiate them in a new context, which is, by the way, what musicians do, right? Which is normal. But here it's very clear what the AI has done, and for that reason, I call it a pastiche, but I will come back on that. So it's not plagiaristic. So if you want more information on that, that song was never commercialized for political reasons, because the Beatles is a monument, is something you cannot touch. But it was copyright. It was it was copyrighted. It was protected. It is declared at SACEM, which is a French association for copyright owners, and the authors are Skigge, Benoît, and myself. It's not the AI. It's us, because we use the AI. That's very important, and I will also conclude on that later. All right, but that's a pastiche. So later, then we did this. We wanted to go a bit further with the tools, and they evolved a lot, and then we could handle audio as well, so we did a lot of other things. And this, I will show you one song that is part of this album called Hello World, which we launched in January 18. And that album was done not with Skigge only, but with many musicians, including Stromae and others, and I will show some. But this is a song I prefer, and it's not a prefer, I should not say that, but I like very much this song. So what we did is we took some bossa novas of the 60s, like Jobim, like this thing. So that's a very well-known song. But here what you can look at is the score. So even if you don't read music, you see that there are long notes, and that kind of notes in alternance, more or less. And well, if you are more like musician, there are very interesting harmonies here, very nice, which are typical of this style, let's say. So we fed the system with many songs like this, and then we composed a new song. So the new song is this one, and you can see there are also long notes and alternance of the same kind of alternance and interesting harmonies. It's a bit small here, you cannot see, I will play it anyway. But I mean, even graphically, you can see some kind of resemblance. But it's not a pastiche, and I will come back on that later. But so what I will do here is I will play it. I cannot have it sung by John Gilberto, because John Gilberto died this year, unfortunately. But what we did is we used audio style transfer to make a kind of an orchestration of this song. So we took a piano track, audio piano track from an existing song by Benoît, which he did several years ago, which we liked. We liked that piano, or he liked. And we took initially the voice of King Crimson on an existing song. And so style transfer consists in taking this stuff and transferring them to this song. And so at the end, you get this. I just play a few seconds. No, that's not me.
He turned around in fear, will carry you on the breeze if you turn to appear.
F major, F minor, typical. G going to B like a tritone, very typical of bossa novas also. Tritone, again, tritone here, sorry. Major, minor. Diminished chords. Semi-diminished. And so forth, all right? Okay, so, oops, sorry. So this song is a new thing, it's completely new, it's not plagiaristic. You cannot say it's a pastiche, because if you hear it, it does not necessarily evoke bossa novas of the 60s. And it's due not only to the orchestration, but also the way that it was generated, where we didn't try to emphasize the common patterns precisely, but we tried to go a little bit elsewhere. But so I would not call this, for that reason, a pastiche. It's really something else. And I will try to categorize at the end what we did. We did other songs, more like popular songs, in particular with this guy. I don't know if you know Stromae here, but in France he's very well known. He made only one album, actually, which was very popular. And then he stopped making music, and then he came to the lab and he composed two songs of the album. And that's what he said when he was working with us. It's going very quickly. So.
C'est le même passage qu'entre la musique organique et la musique électronique, quoi. Ou la composition électronique. Enfin, c'est une espèce de gap. C'est ouf, demain, c'est sûr, on fera tous de la musique comme ça, en fait.
So he said that tomorrow, we all make music like this. He was not only was not paid for that, but I want to say something more on that, about his participation and the participation of all artists. That's something I discovered when I was working with all these artists. So most of them are well known in their field. Of course, Stromae is well known in pop music, but there were other like jazz musicians. And you know, in research, in computer music research, many people are obsessed with the problem of evaluation. You know, so how do you evaluate your system? So you make a system, make music, and how do you say it's good or it's not good? Well, again, first slides, there is no such thing. So you can as well make a system that composes random music and say it's great. You can say whatever you want. What is the evaluation, right? And that's a problem that many people are obsessed with in the community. There are books, entire books about that. You know, so you can make tests and panels, but it doesn't work, because if you make a panel, what you judge is not the goodness, it's just the popularity for the panel, right? So it does not show anything. And I understood something very simple here. If you do real music with a real musician, you have to produce the music, you have to distribute it. And at the end, the musician has to put his name on that, either as a composer or a singer or whatever. Musicians, serious musicians, will never put their names on a song they don't consider as fantastic themselves. Never. Period. So if you have a song on which Stromae or whoever actually puts his name, it's done. The evaluation is done. He thinks it's great. What else do you want? The rest is social pressure, production, marketing, and and then it's more or less random. Okay, fine. So it can be popular or not. Hopefully it is, but the first thing is the guy puts his name on this. That's very important. Well, in computer science, it's the same. If you do crappy code and you put it to GitHub, you don't want your name on that if you think it's not good, right? It's exactly the same. That's an evaluation. You don't need anything else. And there is another evaluation that's more like I would say, capitalistic, but yet it's important that if you want to make a song today in mainstream music, you have to distribute it, you have to make a little bit of promotion. It costs a little bit of money, or maybe it costs a lot of money. So who is ready to put money in this? A label or yourself? So that's a second evaluation. You know, someone believes in the song. It doesn't mean that it's going to be successful. But these things are very important because I think that that's what you learn when you go in the real world, right? So these songs were all signed with enthusiasm by all the artists, and that was for us something very important. So you can listen to this album on any platform again, like Apple Music and Deezer and Amazon. And it was quite popular. I think we have now 12 million streams, which is good. But again, that's not the figure that we are interested here. What was interesting that the musicians all consider the song as being good enough, and even more, so that they could put their names on that. The press, sorry, a little bit about that. The press was very complicated because for 1 year, the press talked only about the AI. And we didn't want that. We wanted the press to talk about the music. Is the music good? So it took the press and the media more than 1 year to finally listen to the album and talk about the music. And there were quite good press at the end. I recommend, for instance, this paper by Melissa Avdef, where she talks about the uncanny valley. That's a concept that has been also used yesterday during the panels. That you get something that's good enough so that you create an impression that really kind of upsets you, puts you in a very, very strange mood, and that's what we want, I think. You know, we don't want AI to generate music that's just like any other music. And there is an ongoing debate, which I will not go through today, between the use of machine learning only as a tool, like what people do at Google, for instance, and our approach where we basically take everything we can to make good music. And there is a kind of, I would not say a battle because it's the same community, but I would summarize this thing by saying that a better model does not imply a better music, right? And so just as an example of that, 1956, Iliac Suite, the first computer-generated stuff generated by a computer is still available. You can see it on the web. And it's supposedly in the style of Bach. It's actually very far, but it's four-part chorales, and it's very, very interesting music. I mean, you can listen to this for 30 minutes. Recently, with students, Gaëtan Adjeres and many other people have used deep learning to really learn Bach chorales in such a way that the result is almost undistinguishable from the chorales. So it's almost perfect. Even for advanced people, they would not be able. Well, they are able because they know all Bach by heart. So if it's not Bach, if they don't know it's necessarily not Bach, but that's another problem. But personally, I mean, listen to that. It's on the web. I don't find that interesting. I would not be able to listen for 20 minutes of that. It's just an exercise. So it means that it's not because you have better model that you have better music, right? Okay, next. What is this? Oops, sorry. Now, I want to talk now about the latest project we have been doing, which ended up by an album, an EP called American Folk Songs, where we were interested in covers precisely, but covers of a new kind. So in that project, we made a system called Orchestrator, which I hope will be available soon, in which what you can do is you can create an orchestration for a given target. So I will just give you an example of what it does. Here, I take a song by Suzanne Vega called Tom's Dinner. I don't know if you know this song. It's a cappella, so she sings without any harmony, right, in the original song. So we took that, and then we took a variety of sources of other pieces of music, and we tried to make them fit to use the orchestrator to generate orchestrations of that a cappella by Suzanne Vega in the style of the sources. So I show one example.
I am sitting.
Can we have a little bit more sound?
The diner on the corner.
So that's, for instance, Schumann piano concerto.
I am sitting in the morning at the diner on the corner. corner. I am waiting at the counter for the man to pour the coffee, and he fills it only halfway. And before I even argue, he is looking out the window at somebody coming in. I open up the paper, there's a story of an actor who had died while...
And here, no edit. It's one click. And this song, this cover by Suzanne Vega was not released. We thought what we think is great, but it's not good enough, let's say, or interesting enough to make it an actual, release. And so I will show you a little bit what we've done in that spirit, and then at the end what we have actually released. So just to emphasize what we are doing here, we start by what we call a lead sheet, which is the melody as it is written on a score. If you write a songbook, so it's quantized, no expression, nothing, and you have basic chords, right? That's we call the lead sheet. So what we did for the project I will talk about now is we took voices sung by singers. So this is a song, Autumn Leaves, by the way, you recognize. So that's a human voice, right?
Toi qui m'aimais.
And we take a source now. We take pieces of music that we liked. So Bill Evans is a pianist, jazz pianist. And this song, Blue in Green, is a very nice song, which has nothing to do with this, of course. Maybe you know the song. I don't know if you people listen to jazz still, and the Beatles. Yeah, I'm a bit outdated, I know. Very nice song. There is no really a rhythm, no beats really, but still, I mean, kind of. Lots of Bill Evans harmonies and stuff. So, okay, what we do is we try to say, okay, we want the Autumn Leaves with this. I'm not very good at clicking either.
C'est une chanson qui nous ressemble, toi qui m'aimais.
So you get the idea. So you can do this in one click. So if you can do this in one click, you can do it for many things. So this is a piece of music by Take Six, which is a six-voice a cappella American group, for which it turns out that I had some of the scores. It's very, very interesting harmonies. This is played on the piano here. This is a song by Take Six. This is the harmonization we got.
C'est une chanson qui nous ressemble, toi qui m'aimais, moi qui t'aimais, nous vivions
if you like harmony, you can recognize all the great harmonies by Take Six. Last example, Korea. Again, I will go quickly.
C'est une chanson.
In all these examples, what's really interesting that the harmonization, the orchestration is not like a textbook thing where you play A minor, C minor. No, it's actually developing a stream of stuff which is quite autonomous, but that fits somehow, let's say. And that's the somehow that we're trying to capture. Okay, I switch. So now so if you want to listen to these things, these examples I played are not, again, released, but what Skigga has done, he has done this EP called American Folk Songs, where he took well-known American standards like Black is the Color, and he got the voice of Pete Seeger. So Pete Seeger is a very well-known blues singer in the States. He's dead now, he's been for a long time, but he got the permission from the family of Pete Seeger. That's also, it's not a scientific evaluation, but that's very strong. So it means they were okay with what they did, what we did with it. So the voice is this one.
Black,
I don't know if you know the song. There are lots of covers of this song on the out there.
Face is something wondrous fair.
So it's a traditional song, and then the way it worked, and then we had to invent a kind of composition process for that, because what do you do with an a cappella voice? You don't have chords, you don't have harmony. What can you do? It's too raw. It's too there is not enough data. So the first step, what he did at the beginning, is he took what he calls skige, what he calls basic epic chords, which are chords like this, simple chords that are used typically for soundtrack, movies, that kind of stuff, where I try to create very basic atmospheres. So this was fed in the system, and you got this.
I'll follow her wherever she goes.
So you get the kind of harmonization, right, of the voice.
Containing these lines.
Which is okay, but it's not enough. But so what we have now is we have something which is a bit richer here than this. So what we do is we take this result here and we use it as a target now. And we are going to use other sources. So we put this as a target, and then we take, again, bossa nova strings, like in the style of Klaus Ogerman, who is the main arranger of all the records by John Gilberto in the 60s. Very, very nice chords like this. String pads with nice harmonies, right? So what the orchestrator did is he took this stuff and tried to make it fit with this, and we generated this thing.
I'll follow her wherever she goes. I'll write her a letter.
And here and so this is the final result.
Black, black, black is the color of my true love's hair.
So I will skip the introduction. You can use it you can see it on the, and I will just show you the strings, because what the AI generated in this case is a score. Everything except the voice, of course. And so we found that the synthetic strings were not good enough, so we had them played by musicians. So that's just an example.
Black, black, black is the color of my true love's hair. Her face is something wondrous fair. The purest
Right, so I skip. You can see this. There are clips and all that. Which I will not show because of time. And I will just show you a last example of AI-generated stuff, which is still different. It's called transfer. So transfer is a new concept. There was a very famous paper a few years ago called style transfer, right, by Gattis and all, how to take two pictures, take the style of one, and apply it to the structure of the other, and to create strange pictures. And so we've tried to do this. People have tried to do this in music with not very good results, but here we have tried to do something a bit more specific, and we call it rhythm transfer. So what the game is, we take one piece of music, so Brahms, intermezzo, and you just look at you listen to the structure. It goes like waves. There is polyphony, of course, with that kind of wave, right? And you take another piece, anyone, like that thing, Schubert, it's a completely different harmony and different rhythm. And you want to say, okay, what about taking the rhythm of this to the harmony of this, or the opposite? So if you take the first, you get this. So you recognize probably the wave movement of Brahms, sorry. And it's exactly the harmony of Schubert, which actually much simpler, right? And you can so this piece of music is completely new. Oops, sorry. It's completely new. There is no plagiarism whatsoever. It's not a cover. It's not a plagiarism. So what is it? It's something different. All right. How much time do you have left, boss?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. So I wanted to talk about skips. Will I skip the skips? No? He says no. And then I conclude. Because that's the most interesting things that I've been doing in the last few years. All right, and that's the reason why I went to Spotify, is to get this data. So, do you know? So you know young people, they listen to music with phones most of the time. And when I was 15, I had 50 records and I was the king. But now you have 50 million titles. So obviously you don't listen the same way. So what they do, what we all do, we take a piece of music and very quickly we skip to the next one. Because we are stupid, you know, because we think there is going to be something else. I don't know why we do that. It's called a society of abundance. Too many things. Yeah, all right, that's the way it is. Some people have looked at the skip profile. How do people skip in time? And the first who did that is Paul Lamer. He's working at Spotify. He did that a few years ago. And, you know, and so what he did, he took a lot of songs. This is time, and this is number of skips. Well, number or percentage. And he noticed something very well known, that most people skip right away after a few seconds. And then it goes like a kind of long tail thing. And Paul did very interesting studies about sex, not much difference in sex, but age, yes, like the young, that 18 or something, they have a bump here. The older ones, they have two, I mean, it's very strange. And you can study skips on average. It's very interesting. It's not a commercial thing. It's just about, the commercial thing is just about like how to avoid this, but you probably cannot. This is just the fact that you put a child in a big shop where all the toys are free, so you are like, you skip. But then the interesting part comes after, right? And so Paul, again, it's on the web. You can see this on the web. But so what we did is we did something different. We looked at one song. So instead of making an average on songs, we wanted to look at this part on one given song. And so what we showed, so this is one song, I don't know which one, but so what happens, of course, at the beginning you have this kind of big drop, but then you focus on what's going on here. You have a bumpy skip profile, right? And so we did two discoveries, which I think are fascinating. I mean, some people find it fascinating, some don't, but first of all, so skip profile is the average of skips for many people for one song, right, for a given time. So what we did was look at this profile at a given date and the same 1 week earlier, 1 month earlier, 3 months earlier, and they're all exactly the same. So you should say, you know, something here. And then we compare the skip profile in Europe and in the States, and they're exactly the same. Yes, that's quite something. And it's not a bug. We looked for the bug for months, and we found many bugs, but this remained. So skip profile is a kind of DNA of the song. It's incredible. It's very robust to time and geography, and if I could get the data of Deezer, I'm sure it would be the same. But if they have, of course, this data, I don't know. The second thing we did is we tried to predict the skip from the audio. Of course, that's the next step. And yes, we can. And yes, we can. Archive paper. We can predict the skip from the audio, which is even more interesting. So you make a piece of music, you have an audio file, and we can tell you when people are going to skip. Why are you laughing? So that's the first time in the history of mankind, well, of history of arts, let's say, that the whole process from the composition and the creation down to the listening, the perception, is the first time we have data for the whole thing. So we have no data on how people read books, for instance. We have data on what they buy, but not how they read, when they get bored, when they stop, when they skip. We don't know. Maybe one day, but I think it will take time because, you know, we don't have data on movies. We don't have that kind of stuff on anything except music. So you can imagine the kind of tools that we can look at. And more recently, with Jonathan Donnier, in a part of the team, he made a better, even better model where he could predict with a very, very high accuracy the location and the amplitude of the skip. But in fact, so that's a very, I'm not saying we predict the number of skips. We predict the percentage. We predict where the skips are going to happen. We are not able to predict the number of skips. Otherwise, we would be able to predict the popularity. Again, I didn't show, but I think it's impossible, right? So what we do here is we don't have any predictor of popularity, but we can say, okay, if you don't want people to skip now, do something. They will skip later anyway, because that's the way it is, you know? Second thing, there is no relation between skip profiles and popularity. You know, in fact, there seems to be one which is inverse, because basically people skip when things happen. Like the drum start, the voice stops, the B, the chorus, the verse, then people skip. So a good way to have no one skipping. The problem is that if you have a sine wave or like a noise, or no one skips, but no one listens to it. So you have the new law of like the frequency, the Shannon thing, you know, or like skipping profile versus popularity. It goes like you cannot have both, right? That is work in progress. I will conclude. Great, new stuff. All right. The real conclusion is this one. I told you what's new. What used to be new is originals. And everything that is not good, trials, bad, and that's cover, that's, well. But now with AI, we have lots of new concepts. I don't know how many, but, and they are not plagiaristic, they are not covers necessarily, they are originals in some way, but a different way. And I'm very bad at drawing and slides, as you can see. I'm really bad. Probably the worst of all is me. But I try I would like to find a way to visualize. So for instance, what is a pastiche? Do you understand why I think this is a pastiche? A pastiche is you take a style. A style, what is a style? A set of works, or an artist, or whatever, you know. So you put these works in a box, and you say, this is the style. You use AI, you generalize, you have a ball, right? Which is a style of something. And a pastiche is a sample of this, but in the middle, in the sense that it's very, very much in the style. It tries to be as much conformant to the style as possible, so possibly by exhibiting all the patterns and stuff, right? But that doesn't mean it's plagiaristic at all, right? It's a new thing, but it's here. And it's a new category of new. Well, a pastiche existed before, but now it's a bit different because you are going to be able to make them with technology, so they have a different status, right? I have two, oops. Yeah, so That Is Car, the Beatles song, is a pastiche, in my opinion, because it precisely tries to do that. You have stylistic exploration, where well, the goal there is to go a bit farther than the middle. Try to take a style, but then explore a little bit at the frontier. That's what we did with Sensitive, the song in the style of Jobim. We try not to be too much Jobim-like. And you can, of course, use unconventional audio stuff to make it even less conventional. But that's, I would call this a stylistic exploration. That's new. That's a new, if you want. So here, stylistic singularity. So I didn't play. That's not the right. It's not the right slide. This is the right schema. So you take a style, and you try to find a sample that also satisfies another style, which is completely different, and then it becomes a singularity. So that's what we did a couple of years ago with the Boulez blues. We generated a blues in the style of Charlie Parker, but all the chords are different, like in dodecaphonic music. So that's exactly a stylistic singularity in my opinion. But again, it's new. Transfer, I don't know how to draw transfer, but you, if you have better ideas, please tell me. Because transfers involves two pieces, not two styles, or two implicit styles. So that we do what you do with transfer. Try to go, but it's not morphing. What I played before is not morphing at all. It's a projection. It goes through a projection in a space and a distance in another space. It's more complex. Hey, that's a question for you. There's mistakes, I think, 2 L's. So I think everybody could agree that this looks like a hallucination as a picture. So what would be the equivalent for music? This I don't have an example. Of course, there are stuff like the Shepard, Rissé, Glissando, and all these things, but they are not really music. They are sound. I mean, there are examples that you can have. You can fool the human perception in many ways. But how can you make an hallucinatory piece of music? That I don't know yet. Maybe it's possible. I don't know. And shameless promotion. This book is very important for you, and go to Deezer and Apple Music and Amazon and listen to the songs, and have your own opinion about whether this is new or not. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Francois. That wasn't boring at all. Quite the contrary. I mean, if any of you are like me, I mean, you probably are expecting great things from this technology. Are you recruiting?
Sorry?
Are you recruiting for your team?
Yes. Well, yeah. Kind of.
I mean, there's a lot of students here, PhD students or
you should make pressure to my boss that you want to be recruited.
So we don't have time for questions, but there's a panel tonight, this afternoon at 4 p.m., where Francois will be also talking with other people on machine learning. Maybe he's recruiting. We don't really have an answer here, but I'm sure some of you will be very intrigued and interested in what's next for music creation and how artificial intelligence can support music creation and what it can mean for our plugin software or other ways of making music. So please,
thanks a lot.
Again.
Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry, do you want to say something else?
No.
All right.